Good morning. Welcome to Hometown Heroes. This is Rick Irving with my co host Mary Staffield, and today we have a real treat for you. We've got Colonel J.B. West, Vietnam Army veteran, helicopter pilot, flew the Hueys, flew the Loaches, and then had a good career in the Army and retired at 30 years. Colonel West, welcome to Hometown Heroes.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
You've had quite a life, haven't you?
My life has been blessed, that's for sure.
You started out, well, we can just say that you're a native Texan and that you're a graduate from Texas Tech. So,
Go Raiders.
and you're a great American. We'll just start here. And this is from 1942. It looks like by the license plate. And that was you in a military uniform.
Yeah, I look back, I found this picture in my mother and dad's photo album, and perhaps it was destined for me to be in the military because for some reason they made me a uniform or got me a uniform during this time frame, and so I'm already getting prepared for the military back in 42.
And that's you from Evant, Texas, correct?
Yes.
And that's down around Gainesville.
No. Events between
Gatesville,
and Goldthwaite.
Yeah. And then you moved on to Lubbock a little later in life. And is that how you were already in Lubbock? So is that why you went to Texas Tech?
Right, because my dad was insistent that I go to college. He couldn't go during the Depression, and he insisted that I go. And I couldn't afford to go anywhere else except to Lubbock because at the time tuition was $50 a semester. And that $50 was hard to come by even for me.
And what would you kind of tell us how you got into the ROTC while you were at college?
Well, that's another one of those wives in the road that you don't know why you took a left or right, but a couple of my high school buddies and I were out at Texas Tech preparing to go register, and we heard they had a pool hall, so we went to the pool hall and was shooting pool, and they said, we don't want to take this extracurricular physical education class because we'll do underwater basket weaving or something. Let's take ROTC. Well, since my dad wasn't in the military, I knew nothing about the military, but I said, okay, you guys do it, I'll do it. And so I went to register for engineering, and they went to register for business administration. And we come back to the pool hall after the fact, and I said, well, they had two classes, and I didn't know which one y'all were going to get. And they said, oh, we got there and we decided to change our mind. So now that I'm signed up for ROTC, I knew nothing about, but it was an easy A. You didn't have any homework, and kind of helped you grade point average. So that was pretty good.
So while you were in the ROTC, you got your pilot's license, your private pilot license?
Yes. I got married my second semester of college, and so she and I worked in it. And so between your sophomore and junior year, the Army would let you take advanced ROTC, and at that point in time, you would get $27 a month. Well, our rent was $45, so that $27 contributed good towards our rent. And then in my junior year, they brought some helicopters down from Fort Sill, Oklahoma, and the pilot said, now, if y'all would like to fly, you're going to get $100 a month extra above your base pay, which at the time was $95. And so now then, boy, sign me up. I'm obviously a mercenary at heart. And so part of that program was that I went out to the municipal airport at Lubbock, and the Army paid for me totally to get my private pilot's fixed wing license while I was in college. And so then that set me on a career to be in aviation when I went on active duty.
And is this is when you were in the ROTC, isn't it?
This was my, you had to go to summer camp between your sophomore and junior year if you were going to go into advanced ROTC. And this is down at Fort Hood. And you can see I'm wearing the typical Army white wall sides there on my haircut and laptop.
And after you got out of college, then did you go into the Army right away, or was it a little later?
Oh, because it took me 7 years to go through college, the ROC department really forgot about me after the 4th year. And so when I graduated, they had forgotten to get a security check on me. So they couldn't commission me until they had a security clearance. And so some of my classmates said, well, aren't you going to interview for any jobs? And I said, I'm going in the Army. Nobody's going to hire me. And they said, well, you ought to do it for experience. So I went over to look at the bulletin board, and I saw all these big engineering companies. And then I saw one called the Army Corps of Engineers. And what do? Well, they said they build military construction all over the world, and they build lakes and dams. Well, my daddy was a fisherman, so in my mind here, now I'm probably 18, well, maybe this time I'm 19 years old. I thought, well, that would really be good. I could help build a dam, and then I could operate the dam and live out there, and I could fish. And that was my career aspiration at the time. But so anyway, I interviewed him, and I had worked, as a surveyor and a road construction stuff. And so I had lots of things on my resume. And so they hired me, and I said, well, I got to go in the Army. And they said, well, that makes no difference. When you have to go in the Army, we'll put you on military leave. Well, okay. So I graduated, and so I couldn't be commissioned. So I came down to Fort Worth and went to work for the Corps of Engineers. And after a month or so, I get a letter that I've now got a security clearance, and I've got to find a judge or some official or somebody to swear me in. And I'm talking about it down at the Corps, and they say, well, we've got a full colonel in the front office. We'll set you up. So the colonel at the Corps at the time swore me in as a new second lieutenant. Then ultimately I went on active duty.
And so you went on military leave for 30 years. Well, not 30 years, but
3 years.
Okay. So that was pretty good, because later on we're going to find out that you retired not only from the Army, but from the Corps of Engineers. So it was a good run, wasn't it?
Right, because, and I'll just go ahead, later on, after I got off active duty, I don't know whether there's other services or just the Army, but you could go back and pay the equivalent of retirement, whatever dollar amount you made as on active duty. You could pay into the retirement system that amount of money, and you could get credit for those military years.
Yeah.
So I borrowed the money that I needed to buy those years back. And by doing that, I got 30 years with the Corps and 30 years with the Army at the same time.
Yeah. That's the way to do it. I was a federal civil servant for a little while, and I bought my active duty years.
Right.
It's worth every penny when you retire.
Yes, it sure was.
So you got sworn in, and where'd you go after that?
Well, this is my picture in ROTC.
Okay.
And whenever I got my pilot's license, then you'll notice on my side there, I have half of wings. Well, they're significant of ROTC aviation. And so that was my graduation from ROTC uniform.
Okay.
And then after I went through basic training, I went to Fort Walters, and learned how to fly helicopters out there.
We've got many friends that flew out there.
Yep.
Right. It was, I was assigned there twice, at the beginning of my active duty and at the end of my active duty.
And what was the helicopter that you flew there for your training?
I flew the TH-55, which we laughingly call the Mattel Messerschmitt because the way it's constructed and so forth. And that's the TH-55 right there. And it's
there's
that's the transmission area. It has 8 fan belts, and those 8 fan belts turn the rotor and the tail rotor. And it has a lever that you pull and has like a rolling pin that rolls out against those fan belts and tightens them up. And then that makes the blades turn.
And this is just an aerial shot from Fort Walters, and there was thousands of.
We had over 1,000 helicopters there at the time, and there would be multiple taking off and landing simultaneously, and they had telephone poles painted different colors, and those telephone poles, they would tell you to follow the red poles or the green poles or whatever color they were, and that way you could have multiple landing and taking off at the same time.
They did all that without computers and AI, so.
Right.
And
this is an interesting one. When we got out of flight training, I was assigned to a new unit at Fort Riley, Kansas. And after we did our unit training, we had to take the helicopters to California so we could put them on a ship and ship them to Vietnam. Well, going out there, we flew, our path took us just north of the Salton Sea. And some of us looked on the charts and saw that it was below sea level. In fact, this picture says it's 230 feet below sea level. So we zoomed down to just a few feet above the water so that we could claim that we had flown helicopters below sea level. And there's not many people that can say that.
no, they can't. unless they crashed in the ocean or something.
Right. And then it quit flying.
And at Fort Riley, you were in the 17th Assault Helicopter Company, correct?
That was the unit we formed up at Fort Riley.
And as we look at the history of Vietnam, 1967, during that time frame, they had just been using the helicopters for a couple of years over there. So the whole combat and the dust off and reconnaissance, that was just coming into being.
Yes.
So you were there early on.
Right. They, at Fort Riley, the supply officer had already been to Vietnam, and so I'm sure he pulled some strings with someone he knew, and he got reassigned out of our unit. And so they made me the supply officer at Riley. And then as such, they put me as head of the advanced party. So me and a couple other individuals went to Vietnam by ourselves to set up all the base camp for our unit to arrive later on.
And whenever you did that, that was just, you just have to go out there and build things.
Yes. I had to sign for all the tents. We had to sign for all the lumber to make these bunkers that you see.
Whenever you say that you had to sign for it, that means that the stuff that you got legitimately, you had to sign for it. The other stuff that you went to scrounge and reappropriate, you didn't have to sign for that.
No, you learn the system. But
We've heard that story a time or two, haven't we, Rick?
We have.
Well, I became quite adept at trading for things.
And this is you right after you first got over there?
Well, this is after the time the unit would have arrived, because now we've got the bunker set up outside the tents, and you see our walkway there made out of pallets, and you see really you can't see all of it, but you see some 2x on top of bunker there, that's holding up the movie screen. I was an engineer officer, and so every unit I was ever in, they always had me building something. And so that's where I came adapted. Scrounging was like in this case, the old man said, I want a movie screen, and then one time he said, I want an officers club. And so it was, you were always doing something.
And then one time he said he wanted a post office.
He said, we got to have a mail room. And so this is my design of a field mail room. And I've even got up there, U.S. Post Office, 17th Assault Helicopter Company. I don't know what the bottom stuff. I had cataracts. I can't read that. But in other words, you'd walk in one door and get your mail through the window and walk out the other door. And so that was one of my designs.
And then this is some.
Well, we found some railroad cars that had bridge timbers. That's those dark lumber on the bottom. And on that same bunch of railroad cars, they had pre-engineered metal buildings. And they were just sitting out there, by themselves. Well, we had you see it over there, we had a front end loader, and we had a bobtail. I had like an 18-wheeler truck to recover helicopters on. So we got the two of those and went to the railroad and unloaded the stuff for somebody and brought it home. And here we are building the orderly room and a operations room out of the stuff we found just sitting unattended on railroad cars.
And like I told you the other day, all that stuff goes by weight. You just got to wait until nobody's looking, and then you can take it, right?
Right, yeah. Well, unfortunately, our maintenance officer, after he saw what we had found, he decided he was going to go get him one. But there was someone waiting there when he got there. And they pulled a few guns on him, and he decided maybe he ought to come back home. And that's me and one of my co-pilots we always flew with, and he's since passed away. But I still have my my holster there holding a 38 Smith & Wesson. And when we flew, we moved the pistol around in front because if we were sitting in the seat and needed to get to our pistol, you couldn't readily get to it on your hip. And so you could get to it if it was in your front of you.
These are some of the guys you would take out to the field.
These are LRPs, long range patrols. And I worked with them for a month or so when I was with the 17th Assault. And we would take them out and watch over them and bring them home when we needed to.
And when you were with the 17th Assault, you were flying the Huey then?
Yes, yeah. Yeah, that was. And this is the way we would sometimes have to bring them home. We would not be able to land wherever they were. And so we had what we called a McGuire rig, which was a parachute harness with just the canvas hookups at the bottom. And we would lower that through the canopy of the trees, and they would strap themselves into the parachute harness. And sometimes one would straddle it, kind of sit in his lap, and you could pull two out at a time. And we didn't have winches. Excuse me. And so we would fly back to base camp with them dangling 50 or 100 feet below us.
That'd be a way to see Vietnam, wouldn't it, under a helicopter like that?
Well, we'd always tell them, don't unhook from the strap until you're on the ground. Well, one day, one of the guys unhooked from the strap and fell some amount of distance. And the way he had his weapon, it went up through here, and he was damaged pretty bad.
Mm.
So that was a lesson. Don't unhook before you hit the ground.
This is kind of a view that you would see as you were going out with the other helicopters. The Cobra, right. You'd have the Cobras and the Loaches.
This was before the Cobra was invented.
Okay.
In Vietnam. We had Charlie models for the gunships. And the Charlie models would be shooting rockets you can see down there, the plumes. And they would prep the landing zone. And then we had two platoons, and each of the platoons would have 5 aircraft. So we'd have 10 aircraft loaded with troops. the typical load was 6 troops. So we'd carry 60 troops at a time and insert them out for a combat operation.
And you'd go one right after other into the landing zone, and
It would depend on the size of the landing zone. If it was a large one, then we would land like 5 at a time, and of course they weren't on the ground just 30, 40 seconds, and they were out because they were all sitting with their feet dangling outside. And as soon as they got close to the ground, they would oftentimes hop off even before we landed. And so the next bunch of helicopters would come right in.
what's this on this Huey?
Those gray things you see there are flares. And we would fly at night and drop these flares out, which was white phosphorus, and it would burn with an eerie yellow glow. They were on parachutes. And so we would just fly circles up there. And as one flare would burn out, we would dump another flare. And so the scary thing here was that whenever you finally was finished and coming back to land, you were always wondering, are any of those parachutes still up here someplace that I can't see and I'm going to fly into them?
Mm-hmm.
But didn't ever hit one.
That's good.
This is a mountain yard. I spent Christmas and Thanksgiving of '67 out in a field environment away from our base camp. And it was right next to a mountain yard village. And they walked up and down the road all beside our tents all the time. And so this was their typical attire right there.
Yeah, it was pretty hot and humid there, right? So
yeah, it was hot for us, but they were used to it, and that was the way they dressed.
Yeah.
And this was one of the tents in the village. So this is typically the way this is kind of up in the mountains south of Way.
He's got some kind of tool there.
Yeah, I put it away, but I'll get it and show it to you. As you can see, this is a real sharp blade here, and it's bamboo that they've bent into like a cane, and they would put that on their shoulder like this and just walk. So if you look very carefully behind his head, you can see the blade part. And I went into that village and bought this off of one of them. That's how I got the picture of that house that they live in, was when I went to buy my axe. And so that's one of my souvenirs from over there.
Mm.
This is the platoon leader I had. He didn't fly all that terribly much, but he was flying with me one day and he wanted to land the aircraft. I was the aircraft commander, but so I said, okay, you can land. We had to do what we call FM homing, and the ground troops would just key the microphone, and we had an instrument on the helicopter that would point to some magnetic angle, and we would turn that direction and fly it, and they'd key the mic again. Well, the trees were so tall and so thick, there was no landing out there. And they had taken C4 plastic explosive and blow this tree down so that we could land. If you look at the bottom left-hand side of that tree, you'll see an M16 leaning up against it. So based on the size of an M16, that tree's got to be somewhere between 3 and 4 feet in diameter. And this was one of my close calls. As we were going in there, for some reason, my platoon leader lost control of the helicopter. And we made several 360-degree turns inside the canopy with trees all around us. and had the tail rotor hit any branch, it would tore the tail rotor off, and we would have crashed. I have no idea how, but I took the controls away from him, regained control, and landed in there successfully.
Hmm.
So one of my many close calls.
There's another close call there.
Yeah, I was flying a colonel one day and command and control, and he had some wounded on the ground. And he, on the intercom, he said, I've got wounded, and the medevacs won't go in right now because it's still too hot of an LZ. Will you go in? Well, I was kind of a smart-aleck, cocky first lieutenant. And I said, well, I've got enough nerve to go if you would go with me, but if you don't go, I'm not going to go. He said, let's go. So they popped smoke, identified the color of smoke, and landed and got some and went back up. And he said, now I got some more in this next rice paddy over here. And that second rice paddy, there were better shots than the first one. Mm. And our helicopter took numerous hits. And this one here is roughly a foot and a half behind my head, dead level. So he wasn't a very good shot, but it was another one of my lucky days.
And whenever you're talking about command and control, you take the commander up and kind of be over everything that's going on, so yes, he could be assessing the situation and kind of fight the battle from up there.
Right. He could tell this platoon, go to your left. You've got people in the tree line. Go to the right, or whatever. He could direct their direction from up above, or if necessary, call in artillery, and whatever need to be done for the situation.
And so, in this particular mission, you were the pilot. Then you had a co-pilot. You had the crew chief. Then you had the commander, but he also had an interpreter, a Vietnamese interpreter. So you already had 5 people.
No, I had 2. I had 6 already.
Okay, you already had 6. And then you're loading more people up.
I picked up 6 more. So I had 12 on board, which was really max load for a hot temperature-wise LZ, because that was really getting toward, overloading the helicopter.
But you got out of there, but
I got
it wasn't easy.
I came up, and when I came up, you could see tracers through the chin bubble. And then I got above a tree line, and I dropped back down, and I built up airspeed, and I did what we call a cyclic climb, which was where you pull back on the cyclic and you go almost vertical very, very fast. You trade horizontal speed for vertical speed. And so I got out of there pretty good. Tell
us about who you saw here.
Well, this is Bob Hope and Raquel Welch. And Chris, we've been up in the field for quite some time. And periodically they would fly back to their base camp to pick up parts and mail. And so Christmas Eve, I was tagged with coming back to Long Bend. That's where our base camp was, and to get supplies and mail. And so on the way back, we were flying along, and over there you'd call for artillery advisory. And they said, you told them where you're going from point A to point B. And they said, well, right in front of you, we've got artillery out of 100,000 feet. That meant that there was an Air Force B-52 bomb strike taking place in front of you. So we had to turn around and go back out, and we were close to the coastline. So we went out and flew out over the ocean down to a place called Vung Tau, and then we came back in. And when we got to our base camp, went to the orderly room and told them we were here and we're going to be leaving in the morning. And they said, well, Bob Hope's going to be here in the morning. Really? Yeah, it's just right down the road here. So the next morning we went out and looked at the helicopter, and a pilot has the authority, if he doesn't think something is flyable, that he can put an X on it and let someone more experienced check it out. So we put an red X on the logbook, and we went to see the Bob Hope show. Well, after that, we went back and of course, if you put a circle around the red X, that means it's got a one-time flight until a more experienced person looks at it. So we put a circle around our red X, and we flew back to the field, and which the maintenance officer kind of jabbed us a little bit for our episode, but we saw Bob Hope, and wasn't no big deal.
And all these pictures we're looking at, you took all the pictures, didn't you? Or most of them?
I carried a 35 millimeter camera, and these were slides that I've transferred over to digital. But the Hueys at that point in time had ashtrays. And so I made a little strap that I could hang my camera on the handle of the ashtray. And if I wasn't flying, I was taking pictures, unless it was, we were being shot at. And later on, when I became a scout pilot and was flying Loach, a single pilot, I would sometimes friction the controls down so they wouldn't move really on their own without a little effort. And I would still take pictures with my 35 millimeter camera.
And that's so important that you could document all that. I was talking to one of my friends that's a roll call member, and he was in Vietnam in the Air Force about the same time you were, and it was during the Tet Offensive. But he had a movie camera. He said he'd go all over the place taking movies, and he said he's got a lot of film that he never has developed. And so I just encouraged him, if you try to develop it and it doesn't turn out good, at least you tried, and you might have some good movies. So taking pictures is really important.
Yeah, I didn't have a movie camera at the time, but I got lots and lots of slides.
You sure do. This is some barracks and.
Well, after the Tet Offensive in '68, I was infused out of the 17th into a Cav unit. And the Cav unit was over at a place called Bearcat, which was the 9th Infantry Division camp. And they had built these wooden barracks for everyone to live in. And so I was transferred over there and had a room here in this particular building.
And part of your job, you were an engineer, helicopter pilot. So you had a lot of building projects. So you get everybody lined up today, fly tomorrow, come back, and every other day you were running your crews.
Right. I had, when I went into the Cav unit, they made me assistant operations officer because the ops officer was fixing to rotate. Well, we get another captain in, and he outranked me. So they said, well, okay, he'll be the operations officer and you'll be his assistant. Well, he and I didn't gee and haw at all. He was a screaming holler type guy, and I'm more laid back. And so the scout platoon needed a platoon leader. So I went to the old man and said, look, I would really like to get out of ops, and can I have the scout platoon? So he made me a platoon leader. Well, I set it up so that I had 5 Loaches at this point in time. And I would have 2 flies a day, another 2 tomorrow, and I always had 1 back for emergency or maintenance as required. And so every other day I flew. And so in every unit I was ever in, they had me building something. Well, in the Cav unit, the 9th Division Commander General had said, I don't want anybody going down to Dongtown, down on the Mekong River, and living in tents. I want you to build barracks. So it became my responsibility to build the barracks for the unit to go to. And so I'd fly one day and I'd do construction the next day. And we had our own infantry platoon. And so the old man had said any of the infantry guys, if they would agree to go work for you as a carpenter, then the last 30 days of their tour, they'll be carpenters versus infantrymen going into the field. So I didn't have a big problem getting people to help build
I'll bet.
the facility. And I remember there was bless his heart, there was an old sergeant there. He should have already retired. Well, they made him my on-site supervisor. And so he got to, at least the last part of his time in Vietnam, he got a secure job building the stuff. And here we are with, we're smoothing out the concrete. And I had built jigs to build all the rafters. And so I had it down, we'd build the walls and on the ground and then rotate them up onto the concrete pads and so forth. So I'd go one day and tell them what to do and go back the next day and we'd do something else.
And in the background, you see your Loach back there, your helicopter.
Right. And this is one of the buildings that the first one that we built was the orderly room. And so then my workers got to move into the orderly room for their, quote, barracks while they built the others, and they didn't have to live in tents anymore down there.
And this is your place here.
Right. When I was infused into the Cav unit, the individual that had stayed in that bunk on the right had been wounded, and he was back on med leave. And so I moved into his bunk for a period of time until they had another room come open. And then I moved to another room. And I think I told you that we had used plywood to frame out the walls. And through my securing items, I had secured an air conditioner and had secured a full-size refrigerator.
Wow.
And innerspring mattresses from the Air Force. Because
See,
the Air Force,
see how good we are.
we cooperate.
That's right.
The Air Force supply system, they did not have access to captured weapons. Well, we in the CAV, or the aircraft, we had access to captured weapons. So you take that and find the supply officer in the Air Force and say, sure would like to have some innerspring mattresses. Well, how about a deuce and a half full? Well, come back next Wednesday and we'll have them for you. And so, you just have a few trade items like that.
That's right. That's how things get done.
And this is my physique as a scout platoon leader. I grew my handlebars, and my nickname was the old water buffalo, since it kind of looks like buffalo horns. And then you can see my platoon patch down there, the war wagons, after John Wayne movie that had the Gatling gun on top of the stagecoach. And this is my scout platoon. The three individuals on the left were all my pilots, and they've since been passed away. And then I'm on the right-hand side sitting down, and the fellow in the white there, he's one of my pilots. Lost contact with him. And some of the enlisted people I still have contact with, but this is my platoon when I was flying scouts.
And you look at those guys and, all young, all experienced combat pilots and full of dreams for the future.
And most of my pilots were maybe 19 years old. And see, I 7 years through college, so I didn't get out of college till I was 25. And then it was a year and a half, so I was a good 27 and 28th birthday in Vietnam.
You were an old man.
I was an old man. And this is typically at the end of a mission, we'd be flying home. And the Loaches could outrun the Cobras based on the loads and whatnot. And the first ones back to the base would get to use the hot water heaters that we had acquired for the shower.
Ah,
One
So
of the
you
things
kind of,
I didn't
no
tell you the
cold
other day.
showers for you, JB.
That's right. We had hot showers. I've got a picture of me supervising their installation. But one thing I didn't tell you the other day, Rick, during the monsoon season, these clouds get very, very low. And I was flying one day, and I went up and flew right in the edge of this cumulus cloud. And I could put my hand out and physically run my hand through the edge of that cloud.
Wow.
And that was such an experience, you know, because it was, like I said, cumulus cloud. It was down, you know, with, as you can see here, they're pretty low. And I had simply gone up and run right along the front edge of it. That's really an experience that you remember.
I've got a question because we talked the other day and visited. Was it when you were flying the Huey or the Loach whenever you had to accompany the vice president and the president of Vietnam?
That was when I was with the 17th and I was flying.
Okay.
I drew the task to go fly chase in the morning for Vice President Key. And I have some pictures of he and Westmoreland walking out to get back in his helicopter, which was painted black. And my mission was to follow him wherever he went. And in case he went down, I was supposed to land and try to rescue him. So I did that of a morning. And then in the afternoon, I did the same thing for President Tu. And he went out to do some sort of an award to the Thai unit that was there from Thailand. And they had the band out there and all the troops lined up in formation. And it was dusty as all get out. And when the 2 helicopters landed out there, we totally wiped those people out. I mean, it was disaster. That they were so close to where they told us to land, and it was so dusty. It was kind of fun.
And whenever you flew that mission with the command and control, and you went and got all those people and rescued them, the commander said that he wanted to award you and give you the highest award that he could, didn't he?
Yeah. I had been in the military at this point in time, in Vietnam, less than a month flying. I knew nothing about how the Army or the military worked, awards and stuff like that. And so after we took the wounded to Hotel 3 in Saigon, Tan Son Nhut, we went back to his base camp and I wanted to inspect the helicopter, and it had numerous holes in it. And I told him, I said, I don't believe we need to be doing any more. I think we need to go back and let it really get inspected. And he said, I need your service number. I'm going to write you up for whatever highest I can get through the chain of command. Well, again, I'm first lieutenant. I know nothing about the military awards. And I said, hey, this is what I came over here. It's what I'm supposed to be doing. I didn't know big deal. I just landed. But, in retrospect, I got lots of other stuff later on. But in retrospect, I gave 6 individuals the opportunity to live. And more important than that, if they weren't Christians, they had the opportunity to live and become a Christian. And you can't get a better award than that.
That's right.
I'm sorry, but I still get emotional.
And that's what our friend Doug Peterson, he was a dust-off pilot over there, and during his time over there, rescued probably over 1,000 people. And then, he talks about, it wasn't just 1,000 because they came back home and then they were able to have children and grandchildren. So, the lives that were saved because of the helicopters and the pilots and especially the dust off is in the hundreds of thousands of people live now because of things just like you did.
Yeah. And you can't get a better award than saving somebody.
That's right. And there's your Loach.
This is the Loach. I had 5 of those, single pilot. And there's different units had different configurations, but in ours, we had the crew chief sit on the left side with an M60 machine gun, and my platoon sergeant was a mechanical engineer as my platoon sergeant, and he designed and fabricated a system where we could get the ammo for the M60 out of the back through a normal ammo tray for a minigun. And so when we would land, we would aim the minigun to the ground so it wouldn't, perhaps accidentally go off and shoot down the runway. And when we would get ready to fly, we had a grease pencil X on the windshield. And we would bring the sight around in front and align it with the X. And then we would get the sight out of the way. And we flew then off of that grease pencil X. If you wanted to go left or right, you'd hit the tail rotors and pedals. And if you wanted to go up and down, you'd use a cyclic. And so we literally flew the Loach then, kind of like you would a fixed wing.
You had a lot of firepower on that.
Right. The Loach shot 4,000 rounds a minute, and we had the whole back end. You can see the ammo tray there. That went completely across the width of the Loach. And then I had ammo back there for the M60, and I had acquired a surplus M2 carbine with the selector, and I had 10 30-round magazines for that carbine, and I had 3 of the magazines tied together, and so I had 9 magazines that way, and then 1 30-round was in the magazine for the quick use. And on one occasion, we used all the minigun ammo and all the M60, and we were down to using my M2 carbine. We had down to 300 rounds.
That's a lot of lead you put out that day.
Yeah, it was a good day. And this is, this would be kind of sometimes typical height that you'd be flying. And you can see it's not very high off the ground, but you had to get down there to be able to see what was going on.
And you took a little more stuff with you. Here's some hand grenades.
Well, we needed a few hand grenades just in case we came across something that needed to have a hand grenade on it. And then we had lots of smoke. A lot of times we would see something and we would throw a smoke out, and because the gun platoon at this point in time, Cobras, would be flying behind us looking around to see where we were at. And so we would throw a smoke grenade out and then move out of the way and let the gunships come in.
And you'd fly low enough that you could just drop these hand grenades right into the bunkers of those spider holes. And
right. Our crew chiefs got really good throwing hand grenades left-handed, and they could get them pretty close or in the foxholes. A lot of times they would build, and I don't understand how they stayed dry, maybe they didn't, but in these rice paddy dikes, they would dig underneath them, and you would just have a little slit that they could look at, and you'd have to, set off out here and shoot the minigun at it or throw grenades in it.
Mm.
Oh, this was one of our interesting assignments. The military intelligence people wanted a prisoner to interrogate. So we went out to the area that they wanted to get a prisoner from, and we landed, and we got this old boy. We motioned him over. Of course, we had an M60 on him, and he came when we motioned him over. And we put his feet on the skids, and put his hands on either side of the front door and the M60 in his stomach in case he tried to grab my crew chief. And we flew him back to the Dongtam so the military could interrogate him as to what was going on out there. So you can see him hanging on the side of the helicopter there.
That's a good way to take prisoners.
Yeah. Well,
And this is kind of interesting. And we've got a good friend, Rex King, that was in the Brownwater Navy. So he could certainly tell some stories about this.
This is the USS Benawa, which was a World War II ship that they converted into the living quarters for the Mobile Riverine Force. And they built a landing pad on it. And one day, a lot of times even they would pull me off of flying scouts to go back to fly command and control. And on this day, that was what happened. And we had the commander, the XO, and ops. They all got sick. And so I had to go run the ops that day. And I had to go land on this ship. Well, the only thing was here, you can see it's anchored. But it was underway that day, and I had to land on it while it was underway. And the visual sight that you have trees going right to left. You got the water waves going right to left.
Oh.
You have the ship going left to right. And so at the point in time that you land on the ship, you've got to be hovering sideways at the same speed that the ship's going. That was a very interesting landing, but I made it successfully.
But you also learned the difference between the port side and the starboard side.
Yeah, we were Army guys, and we had no idea what port or starboard was. And so when they called them for landing, they said, land from the port side. I had no idea. So I asked my crew, I said, y'all have any idea which side the port is? No, I never heard of that. Okay, well, we're just going to land this direction. Well, it was going downwind, and when you try to land the helicopter downwind, you can't slow it down very well. Well, I had to make a go around. As I made the go around, the captain or somebody that was running the ship was the same level as me. And so I looked to my left as I went by him, and he didn't have a real pleasant look on his face. But anyway, I went out, turned around, and came back in and landed against the wind successfully. And they were nice. They gave us a tour of the ship and so forth. And then we got the people on board we needed to carry, and we went out and worked with the Mobile Riverine Force that day.
And these are just some of the river boats
river boats, and they had mini guns on those, and they'd go out and go up and down the small streams looking for BC and so forth. And this is my propaganda. A lot of us, they say, well, Grandpa, what'd you do in the Army? Oh, not much. I just drove the guys to work.
Oh, that's great.
This is the thing I found, that there were nearly 12,000 helicopters over there. 2,200 pilots were killed and 2,700 crew members were killed out of the helicopters. But the thing about Vietnam, in Vietnam, the average infantry command could be in combat 240 days. And in World War II, typically they'd have 40 days in 4 years of physical combat. So anyway.
Yeah, the average age in Vietnam was much lower than World War II as well. You had, to your point, you said a lot of those young people you were working with were 19-year-old helicopter pilots.
Yes.
They were very young in Vietnam.
Right.
Yep.
We had one of our platoon members, when he came home, and a lot of them still do, they tracked down the tail numbers from our helicopters to see where they are today. Well, this particular helicopter was one of my helicopters physically from Vietnam in my platoon. and it belonged to the Lane County, Oregon Sheriff's Department.
Wow.
And the fellow that looked up the tail numbers contacted them, and they said, well, if any of y'all are ever out here, give us a call and we'll go flying. Well, I'm in a documentary film done by those long-range patrol people that we showed earlier. And so I went to a premiere showing of that in Seattle, and I called the Lane County Sheriff and I said, yeah, we can't take it out of Oregon, but if you'll come down to this airfield right south of Portland, we'll go flying. And so I went down there that day, and this is their sheriff's department pilot, and I'm giving him one of my platoon patches, and then we went flying.
Nice.
And Mary, several months ago we had Rex Gooch on, and I think that he told a story about the same helicopter because he came to your unit after you left, didn't he, JB?
Yes. I was there. There's not many that was there when I was that are still alive.
Yeah. Yeah. I was thinking there's a lot of overlap between Rex and JB, and then you add in Bill Henry and Doug Peterson and a few of the other guys that come regularly to the luncheon. And man, you guys could have a reunion.
Absolutely.
Well, that's interesting. There's a museum in Mount Pleasant that supports my unit with reunions.
Wow.
Because he has a Huey from our unit. And he supported World War II pilots until they all got to be 90s and they couldn't fly. And now then, he's supporting our unit, and he lets us fly right now.
And he's Bill Henry's a friend of his, so they've communicated a lot. And then JB has gone and fly. And this is whenever you were on the cruise you mentioned earlier. Whenever you went back to Vietnam.
I went back to Vietnam in 2014 on a cruise out of Beijing, China. And one of the stops was Vietnam. And I asked the tour guide, when we get to this small village called Long Thon, would you tell me when we passed that? Because that was the road that meandered into the Bearcat. Well, when we finally get to Long Thon, we stop, and this is a tourist rest area along the road between Vung Tau and Saigon. And so now then they've got all sorts of snacks you can get there or souvenirs, but it's a rest area for tourists. And then on this, one thing I'll just add while I was there, when I flew with the vice president, we landed on the front lawn of the palace where the president lived. Well, on that cruise and that tour I was just at, I got to physically go inside the palace and go into the war room and living quarters of the president and see all that and see where I had landed when I was in Vietnam. So I have a picture of my standing on the front stairs going in the building. And this is the helicopter from my unit in Vietnam down at Mount Pleasant. And I went down there when I found out that it was there to take some maintenance manuals because I had no idea what the fella had. And since I had acquired maintenance manuals for a Huey, I thought, well, he's got a Huey, he needs my maintenance manuals. And when he found out that I was from that unit, he said, well, he's coming out of the hangar and we're going to go flying. And so I had not flown a Huey since 1985 when I gave up my Aviation Battalion. So from 85 to 2020 or 2019, I had not flown a Huey. And so there I am that particular day flying. And my wife was in the back seat taking videos. And I made my first landing to the ground, and how many of years that would be. And they put on their website that had they had a cup of coffee, they would not have spilt a drop. So it's like riding a bicycle. To old codgers like me, it comes back real easy.
Wow.
And these are 3 helicopters that this fellow owns, aren't they?
Yes. And I've been allowed to fly all 3 of those with him.
Hmm.
Now, at my age, I have difficulty getting in the Cobra. And it's funny as all get out. I got in it okay. And after we flew around and came back to land, brother of the owner of the helicopter, he brought a forklift out with a pallet on it. And he raised the pallet up level with the getting out of the cockpit. And so all I had to do was get my leg out and get on my hands and knees, and he lowered me back down to the ground.
It kind of helped you out.
Of course, they all got a good laugh out of it at my expense, but it was nice anyway.
Well, after 30 years, you retired as a colonel and had a great Army career.
After I had my aviation battalion, I made full colonel. It was a lieutenant colonel slot. And so my civilian job, I had been in Europe and Saudi Arabia. So I went back to Europe. And one of the men that worked for me said, well, I'm in an engineer unit down here by Heidelberg. And our commander just left. And if you'd like, I'll turn your name in. So I was back in Germany less than a week. And I got interviewed and I became the chief of staff for a command down near Heidelberg. So I was there when the wall came down, which is another interesting side bit. But yeah,
seen a lot of the world, haven't you?
I've been quite fortunate to do what I was able to do.
And on top of all the things you've done, you've restored a lot of cars. And that's kind of how we made the connection, because Jeff, one of the board members for Roll Call, had met you at a car show.
Right.
And talked to you. And then I was talking to Bill Henry yesterday, one of our Vietnam veterans, and told him your name. And a little bit later, he sent me a copy of your card. He said, I met him at a car show. So.
Yeah, I've built 9 cars. And I've now sold them all except one. And the wife and I drive that all over the States. We put 26,000 miles on it.
Wow.
It has every modern convenience, cruise control, backup camera, navigation radio with a little screen. The speedometer works off a satellite like your Garmin does.
What kind of car is it? What year?
It's a 55 Pontiac. I painted the same color as one I had like it as a senior in high school.
Wow. That's
so
cool.
It's a pretty neat. It's been published in a national magazine, and I've won numerous awards. But the main thing is, we have fun driving it. It's not a lot of people get these nice cars and they won't drive them because they might get a nick on the paint, and they are called trailer queens. But mine is not a trailer queen. It's a driver, and if it gets a nick on the paint, so be it. It's something that I've had the enjoyment of having.
Yeah.
One of our viewers, John, said, "Thank you, warrior, for your service to our country. God bless."
Yeah. Thank you. Well, I guess I've got reservations to come for the first time for the meeting next Friday. So
you certainly do.
I get to see
I saw your name on the list. That's great, because then we need to talk about getting you scheduled to come be a speaker at the luncheon. I'm assuming that since you live in Lubbock, you've met Kelly Krager with the Vietnam Veteran Oral History Project.
He hadn't met him, but he has been interviewed out there. So
I have about a 2.5 hour interview, which has been transcribed into written stuff.
Yeah.
But we live in Keller now.
Oh, okay.
And I also have a visual interview in the Library of Congress.
Nice.
And he shared that with me, and I was able to watch that. But we have a roll call member that I'm sure you'll make contact with, and that's Chuck Hodge, and he does in-depth interview like a day or two. So
yeah, he was at Vern Mitchell's memorial service yesterday. And just like when he would bring Vern to the luncheons, and the end of the luncheon, Vern would be sitting out by the exit, and I'd sit there and go, "Hey, Vern, what's going on?" And, he'd be the last one left there. Vern was 104, World War II, D-Day +1 on Omaha Beach.
Wow.
He passed away at 104. And, but I'd sit there and he'd say, yeah, I'm waiting on Chuck. Chuck's in there talking. And yesterday, Chuck brought David Huntley to the memorial service. And I'm sitting there talking to David, and I said, "Oh, you waiting on Chuck?" And he said, "Yep, I figured I got to give him at least 30 minutes to talk."
He's got such a passion for
He does.
getting as many stories documented for the veterans' families that he can. So,
Yeah.
Well, I have written all of my experiences down for my kids.
That's great.
I'll send you something, Rick, that you can read that I've documented for my kids.
okay.
It lays out many of the close calls and how those close calls came back to my brain, because I had, when something happened, you can't dwell on it when you're over there. You got to let it go.
That's right.
But there was an experience that brought all of them back, and I documented it for my kids.
Oh,
And,
that's
we just kind of touched the surface today, but we want to have you back so we can really kind of drill down and really hear some of those close calls and some of those other stories you have. Because, flying as much as you flew over there in the different helicopters, different kinds of battles and things, and ferrying the people around, you've got more stories than just an hour can hold. So,
well, it's just, I'm blessed to be here, and that's all you can say.
yeah, absolutely. Well, our time's up today, JB, but
I've talked a long time.
that hour went pretty quick.
It
But
did.
we're so honored and to have you and to know you, and we just look forward to hearing more stories from you, and certainly anxious to meet you in person in about 2 weeks at roll call.
All right. Well, we'll look forward to it.
and next Friday.
That's coming up.
Yeah, next Friday, not this one.
No,
Yeah.
that's correct.
Okay.
But-
Maybe I'll have glasses by then where I can see.
I hope so. Especially if you're gonna drive, hopefully you have your glasses. But you only need them for reading. So,
Yeah. All right. Well, y'all have a nice day.
okay, JB, thank you so much, sir. God bless and go Army.
Hooah.
Oh, Mary, what?
Wow.
I'm so glad that Jeff made that connection for us, and we got to meet another one of our Vietnam veterans.
Yeah. They're our biggest group now, and they have a lot of stories to share, just like, Bill Pugh had. Once we got him to get into depth, we had to have him on several times to really tell him. We probably still haven't heard all of Bill's stories, but they are pretty spectacular. So,
and roll call, started 2014 with just about 12 or 14 World War II veterans.
15 World War II veterans. Yeah.
And look how far we've come now. We've gone through the World War II veterans just about, and have a few, and a handful of Korean veterans. We just lost Jerry Brown the other day.
Right.
And now the biggest group are the Vietnam veterans. So a lot of stories out there for us to go find.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, we're trying to find them all, Rick. You and I, and between I do. You do all the other work. I just find people.
Well, that's our team.
Yeah. So I'm not so good with the technology, but talking to people, I can do that. But yes, we definitely want to get JB slated in there to speak and tell his story at a luncheon, or at least part of it. And then we can, always get him back later to tell other parts of it.
And yesterday morning at 9 o'clock, the reservation line opened, and at 15:11, I think I got a text message that said, "Hey, we're full."
Yeah, at noon it was full, but I had gone to the memorial service and for Vern Mitchell, and I got home and had a couple of things to do and ate lunch, and I got in the computer and it was full. So we have 498 seats full right now. And I don't like to let it go to 500 if I can avoid it, because I always have those that are from the assisted living places or that sort of thing that don't RSVP on time all the time. And so in order to manage that, I try to keep a few seats back. But I had to open up a few more just to we had a couple of groups of volunteers that hadn't got their stuff in yet. I mean, it was like, I've never seen it fill that fast.
Well, that's just a testament of
Wow.
the organization,
Yeah, I'm just not sure, and we keep toying with, do we go to Brother Bob and say, hey, can we start putting people upstairs other than volunteers? But then you got to think about what can they see? What's the mobility? All that kind of stuff. And, we got a lot of stuff to try to work out through there. But, when Rick says it's the hottest ticket in town, it's like when you go online to get a concert ticket, and if you're not there, like when it opens. And this month I sent out a couple of reminders. Hey, it's going to open. I had one that went out, I think Saturday or Sunday, that said it's opening at 9 on Monday. If you don't get the email, you can still go, to eliminate that complaint that I hear sometimes. So I didn't get the email. So you got a text message, told you where to go if you don't get the email. And then at 9:15, I think is when I had the other one scheduled to go out yesterday morning that said, hey, link is open. If you didn't get it, this is the website to go to. And I guess that got people to go do it quick, because 500 seats gone in 3 hours.
And there's so many people that try, and next month maybe they'll get on so they can get their reservation done first thing. But it's just it's an organization like none other. You've got a handful of people on your board. You run a real tight ship. We have so many great sponsors that donate to make this possible, that we can provide a free lunch to veterans and provide a place that it starts at 11:30. If you aren't there by 9:45, if you aren't there by 9:45, it's already getting full. 10:30, you'd think that there's not a seat left in the house. So
at 11 o'clock, we're trying to have people raise their hand to say, hey, I got a seat over here. I got two. If you got to sit, and if you've got more than one in your party, it gets tough to get you to have a seat with somebody that you came with sometimes. So we do our best to get it done. And we can always use more help out with, sponsoring things. But and I've got quite a few already for the wait list. I haven't actually written them down yet, but if you are one of those folks that didn't manage to get your RSVP in, and you still want to get in, you can email us at info@roll-call.org. We'll put you on the wait list. We typically have, of the people that RSVP, we typically have 20 to 30 that will eventually end up canceling, because, as you know, with our particular age group, people get sick, they have doctor's appointments, they have other things that come up, and that happens. So we want to make sure that we have a wait list and get people in if we can. I do everything I can to get people in. Now the other thing going on, as you mentioned, Jerry Brown, And, man, if you went to a lunch anytime in the last several years, Jerry Brown he's the guy who did the Pledge of Allegiance every luncheon. So he was up there, and he was there every single lunch until the last couple of months when he had moved out to Granbury. And we just saw him, Rick, you and I, at the expo, the veteran expo put on by Manny Ramirez. And he looked great. He was doing great. Bill Henry talked to him the night before and was planning on making a trip out to Granbury to go visit him. And the next morning he got the call that he didn't wake up. And obviously that's the way you want to go if you can, live, die suddenly, and all of that. But his services, they originally had planned his funeral. The family had planned his funeral at DFW National at 11 o'clock the morning of the luncheon. So I told Bill, that's a problem, because there's a whole bunch of us that won't be able to go because it's on a luncheon day. So we can go to the visitation the night before, but won't be able to make that because of the luncheon. And Bill said, I didn't even think about it. So he called the son back, and the son was able to get DFW, which is a monumental feat, as you know, to move the service to 9 o'clock that morning. So the big part of that is traffic going to DFW National. To get there in time for a 9 o'clock funeral on Friday morning, you're going to have to leave in enough time to deal with traffic. But those usually last about 30 minutes. So by 9:30, anybody that's on the RSVP list to come to the lunch should still be able to make it. Of course, I'll send something out to remind them that if they're not going to make it after the funeral, to let us know in ample time so that we can fill that seat.
What you might consider too is just kind of at the back, I have a couple of tables just kind of open, so those people that did it then can get there and have a seat. And if Colonel West could have snagged us a helicopter, he could just pick them up and take them over there.
Right, he could fly them out there, flying back, no problem. Then I could even make it.
Oh my. Well, Mary, it's been a good roll call. I mean, not roll call, but podcast today. I was thinking about roll call, and we just are so happy that we could have Colonel West on today to tell some stories about Vietnam. And we just appreciate all the people that are out there that listen to us and support us. And we just appreciate y'all so much. And we'll see you next week on Hometown Heroes.